Good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Sayuda, and I am the Communications Manager for Dell OEM Solutions. Thank you very much for coming today. We think it's going to be a very exciting day. You're going to learn about our customization processes and more about Dell OEM Solutions. We're going to talk about a day in the life of a Dell OEM solution. We're going to tell you about the different types of customization we do, and at a higher level, sort of what Dell OEM does and the evolution of us as an organization within Dell. And with that, I would like to turn the reins over to our global technology evangelists, Josh Neland and Franklin Flint.
Hi. You want me to start?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Franklin Flint. I am a technology evangelist in the OEM group, working with enterprise systems. I started off as a blinding light. Piercing my eye.
You're going to heaven.
Watch the light. So I've been at Dell for 15 years. I've been in the OEM group at Dell since 2001, so that's however many years that is. And I started off working with as a systems consultant, working with specific customers, helping them solve technical issues on building products. And for the past year, I've been working in this role in marketing as technology evangelist, talking to the world and you guys about what we do and trying to get someone to smile and say, hey, that's pretty cool.
Hey, that's pretty cool.
Hey, that's pretty cool. Thank you. And he smiled, too. Yeah. And I'll let Josh introduce himself real quick, now I'll carry on.
Sure. So I am a software engineer by training. I worked my way through various engineering functions in software companies and eventually moved my way into marketing. And in many ways, my experience is probably hopefully going to parallel what you guys hear today, which is kind of the unexpected. So moving from software to business, you learn all kinds of things. It's kind of a whole new world. You learn a lot about Dell. I went and I managed, my last role before this one was managing our consumer products, so all of our Inspiron notebooks, or notebooks. It's a fun space. It's a lot of technology you're used to seeing, but I would say from a profitability point of view, it's just not the most exciting place to be. And so, I looked around within Dell and said, is there anywhere where I can find a smaller company feel where I can really have an impact, where they're doing something interesting more than just shipping computers out as fast as we can. And that's when a colleague of mine introduced me to the Dell OEM team to hear about today. And the OEM team is really quite an interesting place, an anomaly. Once you really grasp what it's doing, it took me a couple weeks. Hopefully we can help you guys on some level assimilate that information a little more.
All right. So I'm going to start off just with some real basics about what's going on at Dell, and then work into what we do in the OEM group, and then hopefully it'll all make sense and all fit together in some way, shape, or form. Most of you are familiar with Dell primarily for our consumer business. We sell a lot of consumer products. We sell a lot of laptops. We sell, desktops, monitors, projectors, printers. We just started selling mobile phones, and I'll pass this around in a minute for you guys to play with. And that is actually not the largest part of our business. In fact, that's one of the smaller parts of our business. One of our largest parts of business is our business sales to institutions, to corporations, to the government, to the military, to healthcare, to education. And that's where the vast majority of our revenue comes from. And some of you are very familiar with that because you work in that field. You're familiar with our server business and our storage business and our business laptops and business desktops and all that stuff. And that's a pretty good business for us. We do okay there. But a few years ago, probably about 99, or maybe a little earlier than that, we started having people coming to us and saying, hey, I'm building this really cool thing that needs a computer. And my first exposure to it was someone who was making a gas pump for gas stations who needed to put a computer in the station that would monitor and track what was going on in the gas pump, so then it would automatically go into the register and do all that stuff. And they had a separate computer just for that connection between the gas pump and the point of sale system. And they came to us and said, hey, we'd love to be doing, your thing rather than building our own. And someone in our LE team, our large enterprise team that sells to corporations, said, hey, why don't we take a sales rep and just put them over here in this little group and say, hey, why don't you sell to people who want to build things out of Dell computers? And so we started doing business with that customer, and they stopped having to build their own computers. They could just buy a Dell computer, put it into their solution, and then when something went wrong with it, the customer actually called them, not Dell. And then if there was a hardware problem, they would call Dell and we'd send a new part out or move the machine out or whatever the issue was. And so it was like the beginning of this OEM group. And at that time, they were called Industry Solutions Group. And we changed the name a few years ago to OEM because that makes more sense. But that was kind of where all that started. And we realized, hey, this is a big business. There's a trend in the industry. You want to do the S-curve thing now? Here. There's a trend in the computing industry or in any technology industry where technology, at the outset of new technology like routers or cell phones or whatever, is brand new cutting edge technology. And it has to be designed and built by the people that are inventing the technology, right? Like video cameras is a good example. The original video cameras were very proprietary. They were designed by the engineers at Sony that made the CCDs and all that kind of stuff, and Panasonic and all those guys. But that's a very expensive proposition to be doing that. But over time, all the components that go into those expensive things that are high margin, high profit, start becoming commoditized. Someone will start making a cheaper CCD and offer it to everybody. They'll start making a cheaper tape mechanism and they'll offer it to anyone who wants to use it. They'll offer software for controlling it and all that kind of stuff. And people start competing with more commodity-based solutions that aren't completely proprietary. And before long, everything that goes into a device could be bought off the shelf. Or for that matter, you can go to someone and say, hey, you're building this for that company, build something similar for my product. It's the same type of technology. And it's, over time, it slowly works its way down to eventually, it's just commodity off the shelf stuff. You know, it could be anything. It's just you're selling software that runs on a product and gets the job done. And that's something that the Dell OEM team realized back in the late 90s and early 2000s is that there's all these people building solutions that have computing parts to them that just need a computer. They don't want to be building motherboards and picking chips out and trying to figure out which hard drive will be around the longest or most reliable and all that. Let's go to someone like a Dell or some other large tier 1 manufacturer and get the technology we need for the computing part, and then our specialty is the software and the integration and the services and all that kind of stuff that goes on to it. And that's where the Dell OEM group has focused our energies, right in that sweet spot of high quality, highly reliable, you know, somewhat controlled life cycle products, very compatible products that can be supported, that isn't in this high-end area where it's all proprietary and custom and complicated. And so that's where the Dell OEM group is focused. Do a lot of work there. But we also meet with people who just build software. They might sell a disk, like a security disk. They say, hey, load this on a server and it'll be on your network and it protects your network. Well, those guys have a hard time with compatibility, with guaranteeing performance and all that kind of stuff. Very often they want to move into a hardware solution, sell an appliance. And so in our organization, we help people do that. And some of the neat things we see going on is our PowerEdge servers, which many of you are familiar with, are very high-end enterprise class, high uptime, rack mount, you know, redundant power supplies, all that stuff designed for IT centers to really be a good, managed, powerful solution. We have customers who take them and put them inside an airport scanner for doing luggage scanning. So when you put your luggage into the scanner, the kind of throughputs they need, it takes a server to provide that kind of throughput. They need the redundant power supplies so they don't go down. And they'll put 4 or 5 of those in there because that's how much processing goes on inside one of those airport luggage scanners.
And on that same note, we have on the IT managed client products, whereas frankly focuses on our enterprise products. We get very creative uses for our client products as well, very meaningful uses as well. So I think a good example would be right now, you've seen the Streak. Franklin showed you, as you probably have seen it in the press, etc. It's a smartphone tablet we have. Well, one of the extreme customizations, and one of the themes we probably see today is we're kind of the OCC, Orange County choppers of Dell. Right? That's probably the best way to think of it. So one of our customers is using this. They're having us go off and do some special graphics, GPUs inside of it. They're actually using it as a belt-worn device inside of a quality control line where people are wearing glasses and they have a heads-up display that is showing them as things move down the line. It's detecting what's in front of them, it's seeing if things line up correctly, and then they say, yes, this looks good, or no, there's a problem, and the line reacts accordingly. Right, so you're seeing actual next-gen stuff you kind of see in the movies, right? Minority Report kind of things actually happening because our customers need these things to happen, and they don't want to go make everything 100% custom with some crazy integrator. They want to use a big name company like that. Another not quite as glamorous, but a little more meaningful example is right now every molecule of insulin that is created on this planet is done so through a Dell server. We are inside of manufacturing plants running nuclear processes, water processes, healthcare manufacturing processes. And again, these are not traditional IT environments. That's why our company exists. Our customers don't say, hey, I really need to migrate my Exchange server and make sure my mail doesn't go down or I don't lose any important Excel files. Right? Our customers are going, look, I've got this incredibly complex problem to solve. I have a huge R&D organization that is working on solving these problems. How can you guys free up those resources so they don't have to work on building a computer? And let us build a computer. Let Dell build a computer for them. Yeah, does that make sense?
About a couple examples of the products we make. We can talk about more if that's what you're interested in. But we'd like to hear from you guys. I mean, we told you a little bit about what we do. What questions do you guys have about that? Nothing? None? Not yet? Well, I'll start spewing some facts, and maybe that'll lead to questions. We are a global organization inside the company. We have general managers in the U.S., we have one in Europe, and we have one in Asia. We have sales teams and engineering teams in every region. We can manufacture these custom solutions in every region, including Brazil. And we have customers just about everywhere as well. We have solutions that are being built and shipped to locations where we don't even do business today, like in Central Africa. We have customers who are building really fantastic solutions out of our hardware and then shipping it out to where they have a market, which may not be where Dell has a market.
One thing I should point out to you guys, it's kind of cool to see, like I said, I came from a different part of the business. Come over here. A day in the life of our salesperson is you could spend 2 days. I just spent 2 days in France. I was along with one of our salespeople.
Oh, poor guy.
I know, it's so sad. But really, we traveled and we saw 4 absolutely different customers. We saw somebody who was responsible for putting together radar systems and sonar systems across all of France and monitoring the entire coastlines, right, the naval traffic amongst the coastlines. We saw people doing train simulations. We saw people doing healthcare equipment, right, MRI machines, etc. I can't even remember what the last one was, but that's kind of my point. There's so much information and so many different types of customers here. It is a little bit hard for us to message, which is kind of the fault of a marketing guy. I can't complain as a marketing guy. It's hard to market, but I will say there's a lot here, and we appreciate any help you can provide in uncovering the interesting parts to your readers, because we can really go in many different directions, right, depending on what you like. The other part I'd like to add to that is the way these kind of things grow within the press, especially, is for a company like Dell, once we get big enough, we actually start really contributing to the bottom line in a noticeable way, right? And that's when people like Forbes, et cetera, start going, hey, I noticed Michael talked about you in your last statement. Can you tell me more? But we're not quite at that point yet. Right? We're just starting to appear in those places. So in a way, I'd just like to point out to you guys are getting an inside scoop to what could be in a year or two a much larger story, given our margins and our growth potential right now. Right? So you could use this as a great way to get if you like what you hear, follow up with Franklin and myself or anybody else in this room that you're talking to, and continue to develop that relationship and use that information. You might be able to be a bigger part of that story as it starts.
Do all your servers fit a specific form factor, or do you guys customize servers for migration?
That's a good question. It's a very good question. In general, our value prop, as I mentioned before, was using standard equipment, right? We put all this engineering effort into a high quality, highly reliable, easy to build, manufactured around the world, supported around the world technology for our IT business. We try to leverage that as much as possible across the board. We haven't really gotten into the business of completely customizing a chassis to a specific depth or shallowness. In some cases, people want different shallower depths because of the rack designs they're going into. But these guys are going to talk about, the engineers are going to talk about some of the stuff we have done And for the most part, we try to stick to the standard stuff, because when you put, hundreds of thousands of engineering hours into designing something to be reliable and powerful and handle the temperatures and everything we're doing with it and be compatible, it doesn't make sense to break that by changing an aspect of it that may affect thermals or may affect compatibility or may affect, supportability, repairable in the field, all that kind of stuff. So for the most part, we stick to what's standard. I'd
like to add to that point, right, which is, if you just listen to what Franklin said, he's been in the group a long time as assisting sales. It's not purely that we can do anything, because we can really do absolutely anything. I mean, we acquired Pro Services. We have engineers right now working on airplane wings. Right? We can absolutely engineer anything you would like, but it will cost you a lot of money. Okay? So part of what we do as a team is say, look, we're Dell, so we can do crazy stuff, or we can help you utilize the off-the-shelf stuff. What's going to make the most sense for you? Right? Where are you going to? It's great that you want all the ports on the front of the machine. Right? That's a really interesting requirement. But by doing that, you're going to increase your support cost by tenfold. Right? And so maybe there's a way we can help you change your design so that you can get huge scale, use off-the-shelf product, etc. Right? And the kind of cool part about Dell is, I know everybody's heard this forever, that we're the direct company, and some of that kind of stuff has changed going into retail. But point being, as Franklin said, this group has been around for about 10 years. So if you think about Dell talking directly to our customers, the way this group was created, because our customers said, we want these things. Right? So we have actually entered markets without really knowing we've entered them before. Right? Industrial PC is a great one. We had customers come to us and say, look, we can't use a standard off-the-shelf OptiPlex boring disk. We just can't. It's built for business environments and business usage, and I'm trying to create a factory automation deployment that runs all the time and very, in higher temperatures, et cetera, dusty environments. So it's just not going to work. And so inadvertently, we actually listened to our customers, and we ended up coming out with a product, a special version of our OptiPlex, that meets all the same requirements that an industrial PC is created to meet. We just didn't even realize it was called an industrial PC, and so we started selling it. So while some people say, hey, we're going to attack this market, this is a market we're going to go after, and we're going to bring in the bloggers and tell them, this is something we really hope we're going to do. Will you guys listen to us and write about us to help support us? Instead, we're actually saying, here are things our customers have stretched us into doing. Isn't this kind of interesting? Right? Trying to expose that story. That's the fundamental difference between how Dell has gotten to this place versus how other integrators and other manufacturers got here. Those customization capabilities align accordingly. Right? You've got customization capabilities on servers, right? Because servers, we have a lot of quality work, a lot of high reliability work that goes in. When you change a small piece, Dale Browning can help explain. There's a lot of downstream implications. Right? Same thing for client computers. If our customers ask for it, we will help them do it if it makes sense.
So who are your salespeople selling to? Give us an idea of your target audience.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have an absolutely dominant presence in the data center appliance business right now. Franklin can talk to that a great deal. We have history.
It's locked.
I mean, unlock it party.
That kind of ruins the experience.
Yeah, it's not the same, is it?
And we are in, I will say we are in 40 other verticals, but that's more of a happenstance number. Those are verticals people have pulled us into. So right now we're looking for the next priority markets that we think we have good products to go into. Industrial PC is a good example. The data center appliance is bread and butter right now.
Give us a better example.
A better example.
Well, the data center appliance, what does that mean?
Okay, well, we have lots of case studies online, so I'll try to mention some of those. There's a company called WebSense that makes a security appliance system. They have several different appliances that they make. They are one of our OEM customers. They use Dell hardware, and we customize the bezel for them and the BIOS and some other things, and load their software, and then they sell those directly to their users, and they're the first line of support when there's an issue with the machine, and we are second and third line for hardware issues.
Do you provide fulfillment for them, or do
They do the final delivery, so they stock inventory and then have a channel that they have to fill with supply. Google, that's another one of our big case studies. The Google search appliance for corporate networks is based on a Dell product. We did a lot of work on. It's kind of an extreme example, but then Google has Google money, and they can do whatever they want. And so, yeah, that's something that we built for them. It's based on one of our primary server platforms, and we paint it yellow and put stickers on it and all that kind of fun stuff. And that goes out. What are some other examples?
And a t-shirt?
I'm sorry?
A t-shirt with the company?
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff. I think some of the engineers might talk about is someone going to talk about Google today? Anyone?
It's part of the show.
Okay, it's part of the show and tell. So we have a lot. We'll be talking about that. You guys will get more about that. There are companies, I can't give some of the names because we sign NDAs, right? Because a lot of people don't want everyone to know what we do for them because they want to be known for their technology, not what Dell's doing.
Neland Hotkey would be one.
That's a good example. I mean, Hotkey is a customer where they took a blade server and working with our engineering team, took our expansion slot that we usually use for network cards and communications, and they put in a high-end graphics adapter with a network connection on it from, Teradici, that communicates out over IP to do PC over IP. So they're basically building blades that can be used as remote clients with extremely high graphics performance. So they can have all these sitting in a data center, and then where the end user is working can be anywhere in the world that you have an IP connection back to that data center. And it's really popular like in the military space where you have highly mobile, really bizarre environments where you have people using displays and computing power, but they don't want to have to put a computer in there where it can fail or have to be moved and all that. It's too critical. So they can put all the servers in a rack, but actually workstation, to be more accurate, somewhere safe, and have direct access to that. So that was a major project undertaking, and it turned out wonderful. That was an absolutely fabulous product. But that's not exactly a network data center type solution. Gosh, who else?
Website?
I mentioned websites
I'm
already.
sorry.
That was the first one I did.
So
So, I mean, that's an idea. I mean, I was just looking for an idea.
Yeah, so the network appliances, the security appliances, if you open up just like SC Magazine and look at their reviews, you may notice that the vast majority of that hardware is Dell hardware.
Kind of a key component of that is, this is a company, in a lot of these cases, think of Google. Google's not a hardware company, they're a software company. And what do they need? The problem to solve was they needed a way to get their software securely and reliably into an intranet, right? So it's not connected to the outside world. So now they had to work with a company like Dell. Right? So this is fundamentally what the OEM team does, is we work with companies who either aren't Dell customers or aren't hardware customers. They're in a totally different industry, and we help enable them into a hardware version of their product. Right? Software delivery. Now it's not a CD-ROM, now it's not a virtual disk or DVD. It's an actual guaranteed piece of hardware. Right? It's going to work when you plug it in.
And it really ranges across the whole spectrum. We have large corporations who see how much money they're spending on hardware engineers building computers. And they're going, we're not experts in computers. Why are we hiring all these hardware engineers? We're a software company that runs on hardware to sell an appliance. Let's find a partner who's a PC expert like Dell and buy the hardware from them, and then we can focus all that energy and resources instead on software and marketing and inventing things for their market. Then at the other extreme of the spectrum, we have people coming to us who are just flat out startups in their first round of funding who say some PhD did this paper on how to do some cool technology that he wants to take to market, and he realizes in order to sell this, I need to build an appliance because that's how it's going to do best in the marketplace because someone told him that, right? He's an academic, not necessarily a marketing expert. And they're going, okay, how do I quickly get to market with my software? Well, someone like Dell can come in, give them the hardware, do all they need to know about on hardware, never have to hire a hardware engineer except maybe someone to do qualification testing, and then they can instantly, overnight, be doing business around the world because we can ship anywhere in the world, and we can support it just about anywhere in the world, right? Whereas if they did that themselves and went on to Fry's and was buying motherboards and chassis and power supplies and hoping that they would be reliable and trying to figure out how are we going to support these when they break, You know, a lot of our customers come to us and they're building it themselves. They're doing whole unit replacements when something breaks on a server, which in Dell's world is like crazy. Why in the world would, when a hard drive fails, you would ship a whole new unit out? How expensive is that? Then you got to bring the old one back and refurbish it and put it into the spare stock, and that's a very expensive way of doing business. But with Dell, we can say, hey, you know, buy the Dell hardware. We'll tell you how to do break fix in the field. We'll let our field people do the break fix in the field.
So guys, along the theme of today's, a day in the life of a Dell OEM solution, can you give a few more examples about a day in your life where you might find a Dell OEM solution?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So there's a great story that we used to tell, and I enjoy retelling it, and that is, you know, you get up in the morning and you go and you turn on the TV and you're watching the news, and a local, like, cable channel advertisement comes up on the screen in HD on it. That is very often an automated solution running on a Dell server that when it's time for the commercial to come on, from a central location, they say, run this ad at this time out there, and the ad comes up and runs in your local station, and then goes off and goes back to the national broadcast. That's a company that builds a solution on Dell hardware that they sell out to these places and then run ads for you locally. And then you go and hop in your car and you're driving down the highway and you hit the toll road and you go through one of those automated scanner things that picks up your little key, that RFID thing as you go under, and they charge your account for whatever it's going to be to go through there. Well, the back end of that is very often a Dell server. That someone has built a solution around a Dell server and sold it to support it. It's not Dell selling it, it's selling to somebody who builds a solution and sells it to the end user. Then you get heading down the highway, and while you're driving along, there's security cameras all over the place, up above you, watching the highway, and let the police know what's going on, and let the EMTs know if there's an accident and you can get out there and help somebody. Well, there are a lot of companies that are building their security surveillance back-end system out of Dell servers and Dell storage. And some of those guys are buying extremely high-end boxes so that they can do automated recognition of issues, like facial recognition, or someone left a briefcase on the floor at the airport and walked away for 30 minutes. And so they can alert the security people about that coming up. And then maybe you're going to the airport, you're going to take off to go across the country somewhere for a meeting, you walk in, you look up there to see what the schedule is for the planes. Well, that digital signage system that's up there showing all the times and schedules and everything might have a Dell PC behind it, powering all those screens. And that's one of our customers is building solutions for digital signage using standard Dell hardware to deliver that. And they're providing the support and all that kind of stuff. Then you put your luggage into the thing. I already mentioned earlier, a lot of the luggage scanning systems have Dell servers in them, a lot of Dell servers in them. And they might have a Dell workstation with the monitors on it, so that their fancy X-ray machine that company's intelligence is in, is X-ray technology, can run and do all that work. And they don't have to design hardware, they just design their X-ray stuff and run it through Dell equipment. And that's another place where you see it. Where are some other places that you see it?
You better not say the TSA scan.
I don't know that those are running on Dell. I don't know.
Especially not the system paying the TSA employees.
Right.
Yeah, all I can think of is the ones you don't want to know about, like the MRI machine.
Right.
And you got ATM.
But a lot of those things you've mentioned are Dell solutions. I mean, they could easily buy those off the shelf and implement their product onto those solutions. So I'm kind of missing the value prop there of where OEM fits into the auto broadcast and commercials. Okay, well, you could run that on a standard Dell server for the software. So where does the OEM piece come in with your day in the life?
Well, with all those examples I gave you, very often there are very specific hardware requirements to guarantee performance and reliability that aren't as simple as going online and just buying the equipment. Right, so you have to have some guidance as to what you need and how you're going to get it. And then what becomes more important is once they develop a solution that works, they need to know that they can deliver that for a long period of time, because they don't have the resources to re-qualify a new solution just every time we decide to throw out a new BIOS or throw out a new processor or something like that. For our organization, we have sales reps in the field and we have systems consultants out in the field that work with our customers to do road mapping, to do change management, to do delivery guarantee, to do supply chain, and all that kind of stuff for the longest amount of time that we can without breaking away from the standard process completely. Right? Because the whole idea is the value of working with us is you're working with standard off-the-shelf equipment. We get you the best value, the highest volume, the best quality, because it's the high volume products. So we have people to help them through that entire process. And then when we have new products coming out down the road, they can share with the customers. Our sales teams and engineers can share with the customers, this is what you need to plan for. This is what you need to expect. And even give them sample units before release so they can do some testing and qualifying and get an idea of what's going on. And if they do a really good job of working together like that, sometimes software engineers go, oh, I haven't been paying attention to Intel's roadmap. What is in the new processor that's coming out that I can take advantage of and add features to my software set?
And actually, let me up-level it for a second. Sure. Right? If you think fundamentally about what we're saying is we're working with product engineers to deliver products, right, as a component of their solution versus IT customers. IT customers want the best and latest and cheapest technology they can get. Right, because they're running Windows, they know Windows is already qualified in most cases on anything we're going to put out because we test that. So they don't care. We change to the newest processor. We give them a free hard disk upgrade. These kind of things. Our customers are software developers who are writing custom code to run on our equipment. So they want the opposite. They want the hardware to stay the same as long as possible. Right? They want the hardware to not change. It to be as they don't want to have to deal with. Oh, Intel created a new processor refresh. Now I have to go do all this retest my entire solution because of Intel? This is horrible. Right? I'd rather just keep buying the same thing I was buying last year and not retest everything. Keep shipping. Does that make sense?
It's also the whole customer. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so a good example would be like if AMD, you guys were to have like a server with like an AMD processor and OEM decides to buy it, you decide to discontinue that AMD processor in your servers, they can still be assured that if a couple of years down the line, they can still get that same type of server with that same type of hardware inside.
That's what our customers would want, and that's what we do as an OEM team and what OEM does on behalf of our customers. But I definitely am not going to go on the record promising anything. But what I will say is we are sensitive to those demands of our customers, and we work with the big Dell organism to make sure that those customers' needs are addressed as well. Right? And they're drastically different than the custom needs of our other customers, or IT customers.
And a lot of times when people say, I want to be able to buy something for 5 years, if you sit and talk to them and say, okay, how about if I tell you a year ahead of time when you can no longer buy it? And you can prepare your engineering teams and qualification teams ready for the change. Usually they're very comfortable with that. The pain most people have with change, not all, but most people have with change is suddenly they can't buy what they need and they weren't prepared for it. Like they're buying it off the website or they're buying it down at Fry's and just hoping they can walk down and buy this motherboard. Well, next time they go to buy it, it may not exist. In our organization, we work very hard at making sure they know exactly what's happening over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on the relationship they have and their needs. But the other big thing that comes up a lot is just the end user experience is what's most important to most of our customers, especially these guys, like the solutions I was just talking about, which could be the standard IT hardware. Very often, the end user would rather say to the software developer, tell me what to buy and I'll buy it. Or even better, sell me the whole thing and guarantee that it's going to work. Don't tell me what to buy because my procurement guy may screw up and not order the right amount of RAM. Again, the sales rep will tell him there's a special on something that's just as good and he'll buy that. And then, 6 months after installation, you have Dell pointing fingers, if they bought it from Dell, at the software company pointing fingers at Dell, and then everyone pointing fingers at the integrator, and it's like, who's to blame? Why can't we get this to work? And these types of solutions are critical enough that these companies developing the software and selling the solutions, and often selling the services around them, want to control the whole thing and absolutely guarantee that end user experience.
I know there's a couple of people who do Windows coverage here, so that probably what I would think a good example there would be workstations. If you do CAD, high graphics intensive applications. I think obvious if we've ever worked in those fields that graphics cards and drivers and experience in that space is valuable, and it's not something that's guaranteed. You can't just go buy the best NVIDIA card you want and hope it works with the software package you want on any workstation, right? Because chances are you'll have horrible performance if it's not 100% qualified, but we do a lot of that work for our customers. But if you think of yourself as, or think of one of your customers who might be producing a special card today, right? Maybe it's a competitor with NVIDIA. It's very high-end graphics card of some sort. Well, they have two options for go-to-market, right? One is, right, I'm going to put this card out on my website. I'm going to try and sell the card and the drivers to as many people as I can. Man, who knows what they're going to plug this thing into, and this is going to be horrendous to try and support all the complexity that could come with how my customers could decide to use this card. Or you could say, maybe I'll go to Dell OEM and use one of their long life workstations and brand it myself, right? And I'll sell, instead of just selling a card and a DVD, I'll sell a turnkey workstation solution for them with monitor and everything, with my branding on it, and it'll be mine. It's my platform. It's my controlled user experience. Well, that's what we allow our customers. Does that make sense?
So, prior to that, I thought you'd always create solutions that were server-based solutions. So you also OEM workstations and you allow customer-facing branding to draw from it.
Okay, I'm going to answer that question in a funny way, and the reason is because we can do anything you'll pay us to do. Okay? So what we commonly do today is we OEM servers, right? And we allow people to rebrand those. We do have one client offering that's not a workstation that we allow people to rebrand themselves. That said, when a customer comes to us, there's always the option to pay an upfront cost and then have that. So it's always on the table. Right? We can do whatever they like. Up till now, we've had people who haven't gone that far that we wanted to pay for the rebranding. But they do buy the workstation. They act as though it's their own product. They sell it as their own product. Sure, it has a Dell label on it, and I have no idea what the end product has on it. You never know what a customer might do. But that's what our offering looks like now. Big on the server data center appliance, starting to look for those opportunities on the client side.
It's all driven by the customer demand and the willingness to fund whatever the work needs to be done.
Who's the competition?
Very different than IT competition. Right? A lot of times we'll see competitors from, of course, you've got normal tier one manufacturers and their channels, integrators. Then you also have white box, and you have homegrown. It's a completely different sell, and it's a really fun spot, right? If you go into normal Dell marketing, they give you a bunch of this very bland material that says, easy to maintain and low cost, because a lot of times IT customers are always buying, a tier one box versus another tier one box. So a lot of times things can be very similar: supply chain, cost control, quality control. We've all figured these things out producing PCs for 25 years. But when you're going to somebody who's making something themselves, you might ask a question like, well, sure, our box is $100 more expensive, but what are you going to do if you have a capacitor issue on all your motherboards and you have to replace them? And they respond with, I got a guy. He's in New York. I call him up. He'll get on a plane. He'll go over wherever we want. Right? Very, very low tech, low end solutions that work for them where they are now. But when they want to grow, they realize they can't just keep hiring guys. Right? So that's what's interesting about our competition is we can be dealing with somebody who's making it themselves, and we have to expose all the things we do on their behalf, procurement and engineering wise, and what they get that's built into every Dell product. Or we can be dealing with one of the normal white box manufacturers, right? Because anybody can go to Taiwan and pump out a bunch of hardware very easily, right? Is that hardware quality tested? Is it designed with quality in mind? Does it have a continuous supply chain set up so that when you do see a processor transition or a component transition, you'll have supply available? Do you have global logistics available? No, right? There's a ODM only does a very small piece, which is the manufacturing of the product. But anybody can go get a product, so that's why anybody can go get a product manufactured. And that's what we add on top of what an ODM does, is to make sure they're manufacturing what you want and that we can support it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does that fit into the OEM business? Does Dell manufacture it and EMC puts the flare code on top of it? All the Dell branded?
I don't think we're qualified to talk about that relationship. We do have customers that use EMC hardware in their OEM solutions, and we're allowed to help make those relationships work. Very often it'll be like some healthcare people that have large databases for PACS or something like that. They'll want EMC because of the quality and the performance and all that stuff, and we'll allow them to buy those through us and then sell them and maintain them. But in general, the relationship between Dell and EMC, where we're OEMing and selling their products, that's really for someone else to talk about.
But you're not double OEMing it. I think the question is where you're getting it from EMC, you're not going to turn around and put it in your OEM channel as an unbranded storage.
No, we are not unbranding EMC products today, and no one's asked us to do that yet. Most of the time, when someone's selling EMC, they want EMC logo all over it to brag about, hey, this is EMC, because they're also charging EMC prices, right? And sometimes we have customers that do that with the Dell logo. We say, hey, you can OEM this, we can customize it, make it have your logo on it. And I go, hey, we're a little bitty tiny company. No one trusts us. We'd rather have the Dell logo on it and have it out there because then they know it's a quality piece of equipment. So we can counter that as well.
What is the OEM group's annual revenue?
I can't give you an exact number. Can I use a number we tell the press all the time? Yeah, it's over $1 billion this year.
I'd be worried if you couldn't tell the number you told the press that.
Well, I've been trained that whenever someone asks a question like that, I have to ask someone for permission. You turn to the PR person and go, uh-oh, what do I do now?
And approximately how many companies?
Oh, I've forgotten that number. What is that number?
How many customers?
Yeah.
1,500.
1,500? Yeah.
How do you guys feel being, how do I put it, conspirators with a company that's bringing down an American institution, Blockbuster? How do you feel partnering with Micro to bring down a great American institution?
Wow.
Well, we are no longer.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely know who had most of their 401k in Blockbuster. Wow. I'm sorry if you were an investor in Blockbuster.
They had ample opportunity and financing to compete in that market,
Yes.
and they chose not to.
And that's a fantastic tee up. Did you ask him to say that? Because
Yes, he did. I can show you.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Because, a big part of what Franklin's talking about up here is there's a lot, just like the mainframe market. I know it's a little boring and stale, but mainframe market was huge, and then x86 came out of the scene, and people said, that's kid stuff. That'll never be able to compete. Well, we know it competed, and it changed the market fundamentally. Right? Well, we're doing the same thing for a lot of our customers. Right? We see customers very commonly who are going, I make something very valuable to my end customer, or to my end customer. But at the same time, I'm having cost pressures, the economy is really hard, I either having a hard time staying in business, or I've had some competitive disadvantage, can you help me? Right? And the way we can usually help those customers, there's two ways. One is by getting them onto a much less expensive and higher quality solution. Right? So helping them with the supply chain problem. The other way, and this is a good kind of, I think, a way to wrap up the conversation or kind of talk about the next piece is we can help them talk to partners in the industry and see where technology is going so that they can use it to change their products fundamentally, architectures, however they need, so they can leverage those technologies. They can get on the IT train and all the work that we're doing on their behalf and disrupt their market. Right? So a great example would be client hypervisor. Right? I spoke with two customers while I was overseas. Two customers on the same day manufacturing the same piece of equipment. They're in the same industry. And these are pieces of equipment that help diagnose problems for you. Right? And so the first customer tried to approach the problem was they said, okay, today we use 2 of your workstations in our solution. And our costs, we need a lower cost solution. So what I want to know the component level costs on everything I buy from you. I want to see how much the DRAM is. I want to see how much the processor is. Because I'm going to manage all this stuff myself, and I'm going to go squeeze this rock and achieve cost advantage that way. Right? Which is a little crazy if you think, Dell is famous for a lot of things. So one of the things we're famous for is making a low cost PC. Right? So if you think you're going to go squeeze better component costs out of your suppliers, it's a little crazy. Right? So in that case, you're talking about somebody whose the overall cost is probably 5%, right? The system is about 5% of their overall cost. In other words, they might save 5% on those costs. You're looking at like, what, 0.25% you might be saving it. You go to the next customer, same architecture, same problem, and they say, I like to just condense these machines into one, because one of the machines is using the PCI bus and the graphics card a lot, and the other machine is using the processor and the hard disks a lot. Why can't I just share those resources and use a client hypervisor, kind of a cutting-edge thing that's coming out, a client hypervisor to virtually run both of those processes next to each other on the same machine, and that way I'm paying for half the machines. Right? And now you're talking about 2.5% of your cost, right? Because you're halving that 5% cost. So this is fundamentally how we can help, and how Frank and I spend a lot of our time, is trying to say, look, here's how you would approach the problem traditionally, but here are some IT solutions that you might be able to leverage, right? Client virtualization is one, hypervisor is one, client virtualization is another. If you think of somebody making ATM machines, what better solution than, or digital signage, what better solution than saying, you know what, instead of having to tack a computer, a $500 to $800 computer on the back of every sign you put out, why don't you just virtualize the whole thing and put a little PC over IP chip in your display, right? Dell is working really hard on making sure that people have a great user experience when they virtualize their desktop. They have very little hardware sitting in front of them. Why not use that same hardware to change your entire cost structure around the digital signage business? And so this is kind of the really interesting spot that we're helping customers with. It's not just how do you get control of your current supply chain, but how do you leverage all these new and emerging technologies to really change the game for you. I don't know if you have any other examples.
Oh, I got tons of them.
I'm sure.
You guys want to hear more examples?
No, I think we're good.
You got to put me to sleep there. It was really sorry. Yeah, it's great.
Any final questions?
I want to backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
Say a customer came to you, say, Neland. He wants to brand our logo on top of, say, the laptops right here. Would that be possible through the Dell OEM?
The word possible is key.
Okay.
Yeah, it is possible, but it requires a lot of engineering work, and volumes have to be reasonable, and there are costs associated with that. But yes, almost anything is possible.
Okay.
But you'd also have to be an OEM customer. It's not like you could just.
Not just a regular customer.
Some company like a university can't go and remove the Dell logo and put their university name on there and place that. We're not doing that.
Is that a process to become an OEM partner?
We have BDMs all over the world, and you talk to them, and they say, here's what we want to do, and they say, hey, maybe that is a fit for us. There's a difference in Dell between an OEM partner and a VAR. We do have that channel business. That's a totally different thing.
Well, going back to the explanation that if a university, say, University of Texas, Austin, UCLA, that's
Wow.
Wow.
Yes. You're my hero. You came to Austin and said that.
I'm sorry.
I like it.
That's great.
It just came out. But if they wanted to, since they have such a large student base, if they wanted to do something like that,
Well, first off, the OEM group has nothing to do with it, because that would be the University of Texas buying equipment for their own use.
Oh, okay.
Right. So that would be the team that sells to the University of Texas would then go and try to figure out how they could do that.
Oh, okay.
Right. Maybe they could, maybe they couldn't. We actually do have laser etching machines in our facilities, and they can laser etch almost anything on anything. But if you want to OEM it, usually OEM implies that you take off the Dell logos and put on your own, because you're hiding the fact it's a Dell. Right. I doubt the University of Texas would care that it has a Dell logo on it. Right. They'd want to add a Longhorn logo, and we're number one, and next time we'll beat UCLA.
And that's a lot of customization.
Scoreboard.
And that's a good point, right? Which is, if you think about that use case, that's probably an IT use case, very similar to any company. Wants to deploy a bunch of email and normal business use types of computers, and Dell's great at that. And we're fantastic. We've got that figured out. We have the right products, etc. Where you will tend to struggle as a customer is if you're a product person and you want all these other needs we talked about, and you come to a normal Dell sales rep, they're not going to understand why wouldn't you want a free hard disk upgrade? Why wouldn't you want all this free stuff? I'm going to give you all this the best technology. Why would you want to hold things stable? That's where we're a little different.
Yeah. And classic examples of that, we have a lot of customers that might be building their own PCI card to connect to satellite uplink modules so they can gather data at very high rates. Well, you go in to meet with those guys, the first question out of their mouths is, can you cool a 40-watt card in your PCI bus? Well, how many IT guys know that? Or would care to know that? Right? I've got to call a bunch of engineers and get them all talking to each other. And one time, that exact scenario came up, and they were redesigning their PCI card. And I called an engineer and said, hey, they're redesigning the PCI card. How much power can they draw? And our engineer said, let me talk to them. And I got the two of them on a conference call together, our engineers and their engineers, and 2 hours later, we taught them how to build a better card to go into our PCI bus. Right? It's like, wow, that's fantastic. And so now they're at a huge competitive advantage to all their competitors who don't have a tier 1 engineering manufacturing company who's kind of inventing this technology, and open standards, helping them do that. They're having to figure it out on their own after the fact. These guys got that help before we released a new product.
Does that influence the consumer market? Like you redesign something, in the case of the PCI card, all of a sudden you realize that this is something that any server, any workstation could benefit from. Is that?
Well, that particular card was engineered by our customer, and it's their custom.
Oh yeah, I understand that.
We don't influence the consumer market much in our space, but the demands of our customers often are big enough and justifiable enough in volume and sales and all that we influence the design of our platform in the enterprise space. I mean, the Optiplex XE is our industrial PC is a good example of that. The model that we sell today is a PowerEdge R210, which is a one-use, single-socket, non-redundant, low-end server. That thing's now only 15.5 inches deep because our customers demanded that from the OEM space, and eventually the big PG went, hey, why can't we do that? There are other people that will want that too, right? So now we have a shallow, it used to be like a 22-inch deep chassis for that class. It went down to 15, you go into NEMS racks, right?
We're making all of our new workstations that are launching will be rackable because of our OEM.
So we do influence it, but it's based on, volume and revenue and all those fun things that come from the OEM group to drive that. Sometimes it's simple things, like when we first started doing this customization stuff, our hard drive carriers on our servers had Dell embossed on them. And our customer said, well, I want to genericize that. So our OEM team put all this work into taking the tooling that made our carriers and made carriers that didn't have Dell on them. And the big Dell organization went, why are we building two different sets of carriers? That's crazy. So they just adopted the unbranded carriers. So now all of our carriers don't have Dell printed all over them or embossed in them, so you can't take it off, right?
Was there cost reduction in that?
Well, for Dell it was, absolutely, because we were building two different ones, and we were passing that cost along to our OEM customers. Now we didn't have to, so we were able to lower the cost of our OEM, our generic boxes. And the team's going to talk about all the different platforms that we offer already genericized versus the custom work we do to create unique designs for customers.
And with that, I will thank Franklin and Josh very much for their time.
Pass cards.